This is the Marketing Agency Power Hour, and I'm your host, Cal Wilder. Each week, we'll power through discussions on business challenges, success stories, and game-changing strategies. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, provider of bookkeeping and accounting for marketing agencies. Let's get started. I'm super excited to be speaking to today's guest. He's a marketing agency leader, an entrepreneur, a brand specialist, and a strategic marketing consultant. He's an expert with over 3 decades of experience in print, interactive video, live events, and advertising. His agency has been recognized as one of the best places to work by the Boston Business Journal, and he's a multi-time Davy Award winner. He's the founder and CEO of KingFish Partners. Cam Brown, welcome to the show.
I totally appreciate that. Open, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I look forward to talking to you, Cal.
Sure. So let's dive right in.
Yeah.
What's the single most important strategy for success in your marketing agency now?
Wow. Well, I guess there's sort of two ways of looking at that. There's what we do internally, and then there's how we're positioning ourselves for kind of future growth for the agency. I'll start with internal first. Without a doubt, I have always felt that you hire good people and you don't need to babysit them and you don't need to watch every single move they make. So, we hire really dynamite, smart, self-starting individuals who come in here, and each one of them is charged with the same thing when we hire them. And that is, before long, within the first couple of weeks that you're here, we really want you to make a direct impact on the agency. Something that we didn't, a process that you bring in, software, that you think we should add to our tech stack, anything whatsoever. And dare to be stupid. You can say whatever you think is, the right answer. But by and large, we empower our employees to do their thing and make our internal work even better. I think that's just incredibly important. I've never been a fan of micromanagement of any source whatsoever. But the other part to your question is, I think that's really important is, my job and our job as an agency is to constantly be looking, what's coming down the road to the best of our ability. We are in a MarTech world, and some of that's pretty hard to predict, but we do see tools and we do see systems that are playing a much more influential role than they have in the past. And we evaluate, implement where appropriate, and plan as needed for those things. So those are kind of two biggies for me, Cal.
Okay, cool. So if we kind of dig in a little bit more to the, the hiring great people and not micromanaging them, and positioning them for success, how do you go about the recruiting and talent evaluation process to select who you want to add to your team?
Boy, it's a dynamite question, and it changes all the time. It truly does. I mean, sometimes there are people lined up, and frankly, much of it is, reputation driven, but it's also economic driven. And, there are times when people are lined up at the door saying, let me in, I want to work with you. And there are times where it's a lot more challenging to find employees. Number one, we work off our brand reputation. We're 24 years old. We're not the new kid on the block. People know who we are. And fortunately, we have a positive reputation. But our interview process is not an easy one. It's not straightforward. It's very, very important for us that you meet with virtually everybody here. Because they all care about something different. Everybody here, whether they're a creative or they're a strategist or they're an account manager, they have a very different expectation and hope for a new employee coming in, and they're going to articulate that their own way. I think that's important. I think it's really important they don't come in and just meet with one or two people. And it cuts both ways, right, Cal? They need to understand us, see how we operate, see if they like it, if they can see themselves here. I would say we use recruiters at times, if it's really, a tough slog to find good folks. And they've been impactful and effective. And that's, something I recommend to many people when they're looking for work is hook up with a really good, reputable recruiter.
And how do you balance W-2 employees and contractors?
Really big part of who we are. Look at our name, KingFish and Partners. We have great reliance on, 1099 people who come in and work with us in specialized projects. Our model is that we will go select the best of the best to work with our clients on a case by case basis, which means A, we've got dynamite talent, but B, we're not carrying those costs during times when they're not being used, and that way we can be more efficient for our clients. Our goal is not to have hundreds of employees here. It never has been. In fact, quite the opposite. If we need a really strong video lead, we will get that individual. They will work with us for the, 60, 75 days during the production of the project. And virtually every single time we take that approach, our clients come back when it's time for the next video in that case and say, I really want to work with that person again. They were great. We allow our clients to be part of that process as well. We'll make recommendations and say, here are two or three folks we think would be dynamite, really strong for this. But take a look at their CVs, take a look at their work, and give me your feedback. Tell me what you think.
So do you have any tricks of the trade then in terms of like balancing, clients just want to work with one person or,
Sure.
how do you avoid being a staffing agency,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't misunderstand. We
Yeah.
do staff our clients appropriately with an account manager or an account director, depending on the size and scope of the project. Sometimes they get the creative director and the associate art director and the graphic designer. Sometimes they don't need that horsepower. They always get our VP of strategy. So no, the full-time employees that manage the project, the process, the deliverables, et cetera, they're all in this house under our roof and full time.
Cool.
Yeah.
So when we spoke earlier, you said you had 4 questions, I think, that you asked your employees during a very detailed performance management process
Right.
that you have. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably for all your listeners, it's probably very similar to what they do, but we put a lot of weight in that process. It's extraordinarily important. I mean, first thing this morning, our VP was in here talking to me about, a performance evaluation that's happening this week. And, we were going through sort of our responses to this individual because, I mean, it's the ultimate training and coaching opportunity. We come in and, we sit down in a casual environment. We never do them in the office. And, this person, whoever's being reviewed, has already seen the feedback. This isn't a surprise attack. This is, hey, these are the things that we've recognized and we would like to call out as well dones, things you achieved and did very, very well. And here are your development areas.
You do these outside the
Yep.
office and you deliver something to the employee before
Yes.
you meet with them.
Yeah, we want this to be a fruitful conversation. We don't want someone to see a development area for the first time and go, I thought I was already doing that. Let me read this part again. I don't really understand. We want this to be a real opportunity for both sides to talk through what's going well and where do we think there's room for improvement. But here's the key. It's not just the manager that fills out this information on the person being reviewed. It's their peers as well. We do a full 360 where you will typically get feedback from 3, 4, 5, 6 people, depending on who you are and how you interact. And I find that to be extremely important. It's not just an attaboy, pat on the head. Hey, we all think you're great. It truly is a way for us to holistically look at the agency and say, how can we be doing this better? And how can this person help us achieve that? So we consider this to be as important as anything else the person does is this performance review and, sort of their responses and their feedback. And look, we're going to get growth objectives too. The person is going to say, you know, I'm glad you brought that up. And it's been a challenge because I really don't feel the training has been there or my exposure to the client has allowed me to do my job, whatever it is. And we hammer that out. And I want to be really clear. It doesn't only happen one day a year. Like that's not the point. The point is to go through these questions you mentioned and really select and highlight those that we think are going to make the biggest difference to that person's development.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've done something similar. When we in the hiring process, um, I would interview candidates like at a local coffee shop or someplace outside of the office just to get them out of an office environment to
Yeah.
interact with them a little bit more authentically,
Yes,
right?
100%. No, it's 100% right, and, look, it's good for you because people aren't knocking on your door and saying, "Can I interrupt? I have this really urgent matter," or whatever. You have 100% dedicated, full-time, look them in the eye, whatever it takes to get this person, you know, conversing about how it's going for them. I mean, these people go home and deal with a boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, whatever it is, and what do they say? They say, "Hey, I had a good day and here's why," or, "I had a really crappy day and here's why." And I want them after this experience to realize we have sincere care about their well-being and development here. And, hopefully they share that and say, now that I think about it, that was a fair conversation. I may not have liked everything I heard, but it was fair.
Right.
And that's how I think you get the highest performance and respect out of employees is, to treat them fairly, to help them and say, let me know if I'm getting this wrong. If I'm getting this wrong, I'm getting it wrong. You need to educate me and let me know that.
So I'd asked you about those 4 questions and then I interrupted you, but,
No, 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 it's okay.
go back to those 4 questions.
Yeah. I mean, the one that I think is really important. Well, I think they're all important, but one that I probably enjoy the conversation around the most is what has this employee done to make Kingfish a better place? What have they done to embrace culture and values? And what have they done to bring benefit to the agency overall? To say Cal's a really nice guy and he's a lot of fun and I like to go have a beer with him, great. I mean, that's fine, but we're here to run a business and we're here to help our clients make more money. So what has this person done to bring some value to that equation and to that goal? And that's where we spend an awful lot of time. Yes, we specify and agree to, what is their formal role and what are the expectations for that? What are the development areas? Of course, that's unique and important in every conversation, but holistically, I like a sense of everyone coming together and contributing. And I want to make sure that that's happening and being talked about during these evaluations.
I mean, it's great. I really sense the passion you have for coaching and developing your people and helping them be as successful as humanly possible. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And they do it for each other. I mean, that's really the key is, yeah, just before here, I was downstairs and the creatives were giving a presentation to a client. And there were three creatives, all engaged on an account manager and account director on the call. And they were going through creative on screen. And what did I hear? I heard, laughing and I heard, oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad you like that. This is the reason we did it. And then I heard interaction between, a creative director and an art director who were, discussing reasoning why they made recommendations that they did and supporting one another. Oh, the way he did this, I liked, and this is how I built on that. I mean, that's energy. That's something that's why they hire you. Don't just put, the beautiful paint on the wall. Tell me the reasoning behind it. Why? How does that match my brand? How is that going to help us be more successful as a company? And that's why interaction is so important with our staff.
Cool. And you also mentioned about future proofing the agency, right?
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you?
Well, what it means to me is in a very frothy ocean, everything is a splash, right? And here I am in marketing, and here I am with something new being rolled out every year that promises to revolutionize how we do it or brutalize how we do it. And my role is to look down the road and say, should we be doing anything differently? Should we be building out new capabilities? Should we be, frankly, ceasing some of the work that we're doing in some areas and focusing on new ones? I happen to love that role. I really do. It's nerve-wracking. You get it wrong, you got problems. But we never want to be seen as kind of a me too. We never want to be seen as saying, "Oh, they do that. Yeah, we can do that too. We do a pretty good job at it." We want to carve new ground. So if I can, I'd just like to give you a little sort of perspective on how we do it and why we're doing it the way that we do it, and then how we're future proofing it. So if that's okay,
Yeah, definitely.
let me roll. And if not, just, wave your arms around madly if this is getting too much. Um, this is the second agency I've started. They've both got their foundings as content marketing agencies. And what I mean by that is we are very, very strong at consulting with clients on, what's going on with their business. They probably wouldn't have let us in the door if something wasn't slightly broken or needing, to be addressed. We understand what that is, make a determination whether that's a good match for what we're good at doing and our services, and kind of take it from there. Um, I think it's extremely important, by the way, that not just one person or two people think about new business opportunities, but everybody say, look, that's a really good prospect for us. That's an important kind of role for us to go after. However, we, as I said, are, especially agency, which means we don't have lots and lots of people. So we had to figure out pretty quickly, how do we get credibility in different vertical markets out there? Just because we're strong at finance doesn't mean we're going to be strong in healthcare. There's an element that we need as part of that process. So since day one, we have hired and retained subject matter experts, whether they are writers, whether they are editors, whether they are strategists, in different verticals where our clients are, or different verticals where of clients that we're pitching. And we do a great job of not only identifying these people, but interviewing them and calculating whether they're going to be, part of our network. They fill out a very thorough profile, and then we do a 15-20 minute interview with them to make sure, yeah, they can stand up in front of a client. They have confidence. They have industry respect. They have authority. They have credibility. All these things are so important because that's what we sell to our clients and what we say we can help them do. So bringing in that authority matters. And keeping that person or people for the life of the account is really important too. So getting into a little too much detail, sorry. The whole idea is subject matter experts really matter to our business. And for 24 years, it's been what sets us apart. Um, our agency business is thriving. It's a very strong shop, but it's also time to call a few things into reality. Okay, so 18 months ago, these subject matter experts, I would speak to them at conferences, I would speak to them on calls, and they said, there's this LLM GPT thing going on out there. And, I'm nervous. This is the writer. I'm nervous. I think that's going to impact my business in some way. And I agreed. I thought so too. And for, 6 months, that drumbeat got pretty loud. And we determined as an agency that we were going to capitalize on industry awareness of and interest in LLMs and training GPTs. And we're going to roll out a new generative AI product to complement what we're doing with the agency. It also allows us to go after a different list of accounts and serve a different market that the core agency really doesn't focus on right now. But the big sort of who cares is we were able to repurpose so many of our subject matter experts and train them on how to work with training GPTs and how to work with injecting empathy into the content that we're creating via LLMs and make this content readable, enjoyable, credible, and not sound mechanized.
So my $1 million question for you then is, and I'm very curious about this,
Mhm.
because when I use these products, ChatGPT or Grok, XAI, they seem to, start with like a Google search and then summarize content from a Google search, to just put it in simplistic terms. But how do you actually go about getting your client to appear as a relevant authority um, in these LLMs?
So our lead trainer would literally strangle me if I gave you 100% of his
Probably, yes.
process. But what I will say is Likely what you're doing is what you just said, treating it like a Google search and then maybe modifying that and trying to refine it to get to the answer that you want. Like, hey, that was good, but I'd like it a little bit more in a professorial tone. I'd like it to talk a little bit more about this chemical and less about these four chemicals, whatever your prompts are. There's prompting and there's training. What we do is we train multiple GPTs for each client. Some have to do with audience development. Okay. So when we kick off a project, you tell us who your core audience is. Great. We're going to build on that. We're going to find additional audiences as part of our deliverable to you. When it comes to SEO, we have GPTs that are trained just for SEO. We're going to go out and we are not only going to do competitive SEO analysis, but we are going to go out and say, based on your current keywords, we can improve on those based on some core search metrics. So we have SEO going out there, and it's very important to know the content we're producing has a strong SEO focus to it. We are going out and we are assigning GPTs to research, industry research. We're scraping Reddit. We're scraping all the blogs we can, high authority ranking blogs, to get more specific detail and research about your companies. And then we have, GPT set up for, producing content. The number doesn't matter. It's somewhere between 6 and 8 typically for each client that we train GPTs for. But what's absolutely critical is this human in the loop component, our subject matter experts that are part of this process. They're not only reading every word, they're testing every bit of research to make sure there aren't inaccuracies, there aren't hallucinations. It's not full of AI slop. Yes, buzzword, 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 but it's truly what gets produced if you're not going about the training correctly. So having these SMEs read every word, inject that readability into it, makes your search results, this was all getting to your answer, by the way, makes your search results rank far, far higher than just trying to out Google.
Okay.
Did that help or was that cluttered? You got to help me out here.
Well, it may be some special sauce that you can't share, but it's an emerging area.
It is. It is
Yes.
an emerging area. And listen, it's a really fun area for us to play in because it leverages everything we've been building on for 24 years. And frankly, the launch of this product named Wetware has been strong because of our reputation as a content marketing agency.
So you formed a division within your
Yeah.
business focused on generative AI?
Yeah. It's a product. Yep. Yep.
Cool.
And we approach it differently than we do sort of our, full service thought leadership clients. It is a, it's a much shorter process. It's a shorter process of getting product into market. And typically our customers for Wetware have very different objectives than, the customers for most of KingFish Partners.
And so what is this product? If I were to buy this product,
Yeah,
what do
sure.
I get?
Yeah, what you do is so the training takes significant amount of time, right? And we let our clients know that, to train GPTs on your behalf, not only do we have to pour in their branding, but then we have to do everything else. So they may give 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 assets for us to get, tone and voice and information about their brand right. And then we're training the other GPTs, tens of hours. Again, I don't want to get into great specificity, but lots of time goes into that.
So this product ultimately creates content for your clients, but in their own voice and based on their own expertise, right?
Bingo.
Okay.
That's 100%.
So it's like, a customized GPT for
Yes.
your client
Yes.
that's going to be a lot better than if I just go to ChatGPT and ask a question.
Infinitely better and more readable and a lot more credible. It doesn't read like a mechanized output. So the answer is what you get is 10 articles or 10 assets, whatever those are, up to a certain word length, 1,500 words, 1,600 words, that have been created by an authority on that topic alongside of GPTs. So you get 10 of these articles, and typically people like about 10 articles quarterly. There's some who like more than that, and there's some who don't have a need for quite that much. Once we do the second round of 10 articles for deliverables, It's a little bit discounted because we've already gone through the training. It's not wildly discounted because we still have to have the authority involved and still have to copy edit 10 articles and do rounds of revisions and so on. But it's a really smart process. The people using it for the last couple of months are frankly blown away by what's happening.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Cool. Yeah. So we talked about, your AI product. We talked about your passion for developing your people. But I'm curious kind of how you measure success internally at your agency and kind of what are your objectives as the owner of the agency? What are you trying to accomplish and how do you measure that and what does success look like for you?
For me, I mean, look, it comes down to employee performance and recognition. Somebody works here because they need a career. They want a career. We don't just put you in your office, shut the door and say, you are now going to be an account manager forever. Congratulations. When we interview, we try and get a sense of what are the people looking for? Are they looking for advancement? Are they unclear if they want account service or design? What is it they're looking to get out of, employment here? And provided it's reasonable and matches well with what we're trying to do, we bring them in with a goal. Look, 6 months from now, 8 months from now, 12 months from now, we'd like to promote you to senior account manager. These are the things that, you need to work on to get there. So when I see Cal go from one level and a year later go to the next level, and that was a deliberate path that we had all talked about, that's a measure of success for me. That's a crazy measure of success for me. When I see Cal want to be here for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, that's a measure of success for me. A measure of failure is when someone's here for less than 2 years. Something's gone wrong. We haven't provided the right environment, the right coaching, the right training, the right something, because you left. You left. And that is something that we try and avoid at all costs. Not because we've invested time in you. That's our job. But because we weren't able to retain you, we weren't able to give you something that got you excited enough to stay here. And that kills us, and we try and figure out why it happened.
Hmm. What are some challenges that you're facing these days?
I don't know. I don't know what the biggest one is. I would put like a whole lot of them right there. One of the challenges we always face, and it's cyclical to a degree, and right now we're facing it, is, customers, clients saying, I think I could build this in-house. I think we should have our own internal agency. That's what I put that at a 4-year cycle. Pretty much ties to economic conditions. When times are good, there's this sort of interest for the CMO or the VP of marketing to surround themselves with talent. And instead of outsourcing to an agency, they say, we got some money. We could build this ourselves internally. I've seen it. I've been in business since 1987. I've seen that happen so many times. I can't begin to tell. I've seen the cycle so many times, and it's painful. But it always comes around. So that's one, I would say for sure is the internal challenge. The other challenge is always people getting half the story and thinking they got it, thinking they know what's going on. And honestly, not to beat this horse to death, I think generative AI is a great way to look at it. Make no mistake, I have clients who are saying, well, you produce all this content for us. Why can't we do that? Well, I can very quickly tell them you don't have access to SMEs. They're not, you're talking about building this and doing it through prompts internally to try and achieve the same thing. Certainly it's not going to work. And people reading it are going to go, that doesn't sound like you. That doesn't sound like your brand. That sounds like junk. And if they have the wits about them, they can put it through an AI identifier and say, what's the likelihood that this content was written by AI and not by Cal? And it'll come back and say, a 75% likelihood, 85% likelihood, 90% likelihood. When we create content, it's under 3% likelihood that it was created by AI if we're using the wetware product. So, that's every time there's something new, it's that whole shiny object thing, right? People just run to it. This is bigger. Let's be clear. Generative AI and AI in general is much bigger than a shiny object. It is transforming how all businesses operate, including marketing agencies. And we just have to be wise about where to apply it and where not to go running off into the, into the shiny danger world.
Yeah. I completely appreciate that because I've used AI to generate some marketing content for my business at SmartBooks, and um you read it, and it's like, yeah, I got to do some serious editing before it's something I feel proud to put my name on,
Yeah,
right?
right, right,
I
right.
even I wrote the book, The Financial Operating System for Marketing Agencies, and published it. And, I tried to parse out 52 different
Yeah.
topics, one per week. Um, and, I had AI do that initial parsing, but we had to do a lot of editing
Oh,
to,
I know you did.
and even then, I'm still cringing a little bit at some of what we ended up with, but there's only so much we can do. We're a
Yeah.
small company.
Well, you've been through it, so you know the deal, and that was for your own business. And some of the folks we're working with, they're multi-billion-dollar businesses, they're publicly traded entities, and they can't suffer any of those potential consequences. They can't put out unreadable slop. They can't put out something which suddenly, their readers are going, you used to put some effort into this, and I can tell you haven't. That's bad. That's very, very bad. This is meant to empower creative thinking, not take away creative thinking. And the two go hand in hand. And the danger is that a lot of people who don't know what they're doing are just throwing information out there. Um, Look, the best way to get information is still to interview, the leadership team. We always interview CEOs and presidents and CFOs and chief information officers and heads of state for sales to understand, what do they care about? What are we going to have to think about with this content? And what can't we do? There could be 10 rules about what not to do, and we don't know that till we actually have a conversation with people. So that human in the loop is so important to what we do.
So what kinds of clients does Kingfish work with?
Yeah, so look at it by vertical. So we work with a lot of folks in financial services, in healthcare, in technology, in education. We've had strong experiences in most every vertical out there. Typically, what happens is when we're on a roll and working with two or three in one particular vertical, more kind of want to come in. They say, it's working for that my competitor over here, or this entity. I need a piece of that. I want to know why it's working. We, because of our model of having SMEs, we can go into any industry. We're the strategists. We're the marketers. They're the critical thinkers when it comes to what the industry is looking for informationally. So that's why the partnership vertical by vertical is so important with SMEs. It's just so critical.
And you mentioned working with some public companies. You tend to work with, enterprise size clients.
I would say medium plus. Um, Enterprise can be really good. They can be really challenging. There's no doubt about it. They can have rules we don't like. We go into mandatory review every 2 years. Like, what? We found you out of, we bird dogged you. We started having this conversation with you. An automatic review is a little bit painful, but look, it's the business we all chose. So we know that some of that's coming. But as long as we have thoughtful, smart clients who know how to make decisions, who know how to make deadlines, it's going to be a good partnership. They rely on us, and we rely on them. And, frankly, late nights, working hard with a client, there's no better way to gain a friend than doing that for, a period of time when you go through it together. And when you're successful, it's not just about the work, it's how do we perform? And you have a client for a long time, you're performing well, they're performing well. And that's our job. We're the man behind the curtain, right? It's not about us. It's not about our credit. It's always about our clients. Hell, we celebrate back here. We just don't, we don't do it in front of our clients.
Yep. So Cam, you've accomplished a lot. Let's think back to little Cam, early life. And did you think you'd be running and operating and owning your own business, being an entrepreneur?
No, no,
What's
no.
what's that journey like?
I thought I'd probably be, running some kind of hut on the AMC or out doing fishing charters. I mean, I didn't really see this coming. No, I grew up sort of middle cam. I grew up as a peddler, selling for media companies. Early on, selling space and magazines. After that, building interactive programs and campaigns for clients. Um, it is a natural progression. Marketing and sales are obviously go hand in hand and are quite interchangeable often. So, moving into marketing from sales made all the sense in the world. And I think you've seen a lot of people do it. Um, for me, the fun of it is identifying companies that something's just not quite right. I've read about that they are finding themselves over prescribed to competitors. They're like, oh my God, I didn't used to have competitors. Now I've got them everywhere. Or, bleeding customers for some reason. There could be a lot of reasons for it. How do we stop the bleeding and how do we get them to start acquiring customers again? Whatever. That to me is the fun of problem solving.
So when did you start your, KingFish and Partners?
2001. Very,
Okay.
very poor timing by most people to start in November of 2001. But my rationale at the time, I don't like to say publicly anymore because I got it so wrong. I don't want to get into it, but it ultimately was a decent time, to start an agency. Once the dust settled, we were able to start having, really good conversations about, 2 or 3, 4 months in. And we're able to be really methodical. Starting from scratch, the good part is you have no baggage. The bad part is the baggage is all those customers of your past that are so tempting to go back after again. And you're like, you know what? Clean slate. We're not doing that. This is going to be fresh thought and fresh work. But yeah, 2001, so that puts us at 24 years.
That's great.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I have a bad habit of starting businesses in the middle of recessions too. I have an IT services business, started in, incorporated the summer of 2000,
Okay. I think you know what you're talking about. Yeah.
just when the market started crashing. And then we started SmartBooks in, beginning of 2009 in the Great Recession.
An 0 for 2 there. Yeah, that's a tough
But
one.
it works out well.
Well, look, if you gut it out, and look, I will tell you that when 2020 came around, March of 2020, we, like everybody else, had no idea what the heck was happening. And, we moved out of our office and everyone, started working from home. And, our customers, we sort of had an edict, and that was don't say to your customer, so what's our next campaign going to be? When do we start working on the next campaign? Our customers are in as much a world of hurt as we are, not knowing what's happening to their business. We just have to be there to support them. If they need something, if they need only research, whatever, and don't put your hand out. Don't say, hey, we're on the, hey, you talk to us, so we're going to charge you for that. We're not a nickel and diming group. We don't do that anyway. But we learned a lot during the first 6 months of COVID, and we said to our clients, look, when you're ready to re-engage, let us know. We totally understand a quiet period here. We'll check in with you every now and then, make sure you're doing okay. We didn't pitch a lot. We didn't push a lot. And we actually ended up 2020 in a better year than 2019. And I truly believe it was our non-aggressive approach and kind of human approach, to recognizing we're all in this together. So, it's how you work a bad situation. And we were all in the same boat. Everybody was in the same boat.
Yeah, those were tough times. I remember clients trying to navigate, we do accounting and finance and tax for small and mid-sized businesses, and everybody was trying to figure out how to navigate that situation.
I don't know. Your phone must have been ringing like crazy. I mean, people must have had so many if-then scenarios. Well, Cal, what if I do it like this? Or what if we pull back? Or what if we do this? You must have been exhausted. You must have been.
Yeah, we got pretty, we were tired at the end of 2020. We did so many modeling exercises with fixed and variable costs and, helping clients figure out how to keep, stay in a lot of cases, how to stay in business.
Yeah, right. 100%.
Right?
Yeah, 100%.
And finance is never the primary skill set of for most small business owners. So I'm curious how you manage the accounting and finance at your agency.
So we have always sort of followed the model of a business manager who serves as accountant slash business manager, and money in, money out. Pretty simple finances. We have accountants to do the heavy work, the heavy lift for us. We have used a couple of different accounting software um, over time. And we've got a great relationship with our CPA, who is very meaningful and brings a lot of value. Interestingly, it's probably the lowest turnover position that we've had at the agency. And thank goodness for that, because they really are, my business manager is a critical partner of mine. And they have to be able to come in and say, hey, look, heads up, I see this coming down the road, or this is happening, or we need to fix this. And they can't listen to me and say, okay, there's my answer. They have to say, no, Cam, look, I'm a business manager. This is what we need to do. And you need to be able to trust that person implicitly. And I always have, and with virtually no exception, I've been able to trust them. Um, one person gave me a great piece of advice, that unfortunately he gave me about a year after I started my business, and that was, your first hire should be a fantastic business manager. Someone who comes in and really does basically do COO services as you're getting off the ground. I wish I had had that conversation with him, back when I was starting the business, because that would have been a material difference to me. And we had plenty of missteps along the way, because you are looking at an English major from a small liberal arts school who avoided math for most of his life. It's been my life for 24 years, and I'm much better at it now. But some practical training would have been awesome. And even being handed a P&L for the first time, at another place where I worked, there was nominal training around that. Here you go, figure it out. Your balance sheet, I need to look at it every quarter. I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. So I think a lot of people make a mistake by not learning what you do, the financial side of running a business.
So at your scale, you're not involved in the day-to-day accounting and books, I presume. But how do you balance getting enough information to stay informed to make good business
Sure.
decisions around finance without having to go into the weeds? Like, how do you manage like metrics, scorecards, forecasting, budgeting? Like,
By all of that. Yeah, by having all those tools. And I meet sort of formally with my business manager once a week. It can be twice a week. At the end of the quarter, it typically is, two, if not three times a week. But we have processes in place. We have, spreadsheets in place. We have accounting best practices in place, so that it's not painful. And if I want to dive into the weeds on an issue, I can do it instantly. Let me just blow that up. Let me understand it better. Got it. We audit all of our clients. We audit our clients and our employees' time against those clients. We have very simple reports that I can look at and say, that client is in, the top third of what we're of accounts, but they're not taking up, as much time as they should by our employees. Why is that? Why are we not putting more time into that account? Conversely, the opposite can be true on the other end of the scale. And you need to look at all those things. And then you need to talk with who's in charge of that account and say, help me understand this. I'm not saying you're doing it wrong. Heck, if you're doing it, if it's working, great. But, it seems to me you've got some hours that could be applied to this account.
you
First
don't
step
want the
is,
client to be too profitable because then it may reflect the fact you're underserving them, right?
no, absolutely. And by the way, we have very specific business goals for every client. We're hitting them, or they're not going to be a client. Let's face it, we will get a bullet quickly on that front. But if there looks like there's capacity, let's understand why. You know, oh, the reason for that last month is our core client went on sabbatical for 3 weeks, and she said, we're going to sort of pause while I'm gone. You can keep these things rolling, but don't do anything new. So the hours went down. Yeah, it's explained away. Got it. Perfect. Thank you. But if you don't have those conversations with your business manager, You are out of touch. I will also say that this agency does status twice a week, where we're all physically together in the room. We're talking about each active account, what the deliverables are for that account that week and the next week, and where they need help. Where do they need creative help? Where do they need strategic help? Where do they need sales help? Where do they need any kind of help?
You do
And
that
we
twice a week?
Mondays and Thursdays, you
Wow.
got it. Yep. Mondays is in depth. Thursdays is tops of the waves. If you talk for more than 30 seconds, you're going to get something tossed at you. It's just tops of the waves. Here's what's going on. I'm going to close this week as prescribed. I said I was going to get these things done. They're going to get done. The client's going to be happy. But yeah, I mean, and that's not, sort of meant to be this like authoritarian approach to how we run the business. Our business is not to ever miss a deadline. Our approach is to always be accurate. And we have to have a system of checks and balances in there to achieve that. We pump out a lot of campaigns, a lot of content, a lot of websites, and they can't be flawed. That makes clients very unhappy, and rightfully so.
So we talked a lot about business, but I know you've got some interest outside of business as well. What do you do for fun outside of work?
Well, I kind of tip my hat to two of them. I didn't know you were going to ask that, but yeah, look, I live in New England. We've got great access to water, oceans and lakes here. I take advantage of both of those fully. So avid fisherman, love to be on the water with family and friends. Great time. Love to ski, love to hike. I don't love to play golf. I like to play golf, but all those things take a lot of time. So I have to be a little choosy about what
Yeah,
I do.
golf is tough. I had a few years in my 20s when I played a lot of golf, but I realized I wasn't very good at it, and it took a lot of time and money, and
Yeah,
they were very frustrating. So I moved on from golf.
all those things, and in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it's all those things too. It truly is. But let's face it, what a great time to spend 5 hours with three buddies, and it's just
That's true.
it's a lot of
I
fun.
do feel blessed here in New England. We get the seasons, we get snow, we get
Yeah,
summertime. There's fall and spring are awesome.
yeah,
It's a great place to live.
it really is. Love it.
And you're also active in town government, right?
I have been until recently. Yeah, I've been on my select board of my town, which was just a great privilege. It really was. I love doing it. I remain involved on on a couple of different committees, within the town. Look, it's not everybody's bag. It's mine. I like it. It's rewarding, and I like to see improvement. And it takes volunteerism to get that done. So I'm happy to do that when I can.
I'm curious to know a little bit more about that experience because
Sure.
I I keep an eye, relatively close eye on politics and town happenings and things like that. But I always feel like government would be like pulling teeth to get anything done.
So
How did that work?
yeah, that's everybody's perception, and some of it's fair. Some of it's fair because things take more time than we all think. You want to get something done, you go off and get it done. You do it in government, there has to be a process that is strictly followed. There has to be an RFP process that's strictly followed if you want to bring in a new vendor or, consider any proposal. There have to be multiple applicants for it. That's the mechanics of it. But, the best part of it, Cal, is your job as a select board member is to listen to your constituents, to listen to the town folk, but to listen, to the folks where you live, and hear what's on their minds and hear what they don't like and hear what they'd like to see fixed. You can't have an agenda. And I never did. I truly never had an agenda. It was, hey, I've talked to a handful of people and they're all saying the same thing. Here's what it is. This is obviously an issue. We need to talk about it. We need to address it at some level. And then you need to communicate back to the town. We heard you and we're doing something about it. Now, to your point, most people go, well, it's not done yet. Yep, fair enough. But it's, you got to know it's in the queue. And as long as you have a strong town manager, town administrator, town leader, who, while ostensibly they work for you, it's really a team of 6 to 10 that is trying to get things done, and it's working closely with the finance department. I find it to be some of the best work you can possibly do, and that you're serving the people.
I think that's admirable that you didn't go in with an agenda. You just wanted to listen to your town folk and figure out their priorities and try to act on those. My problem is I would probably go in with too much of an agenda. When I get frustrated that I couldn't advance my.
I'm not going to lie. Is there frustration here and there? Of course there is, because I own a business, you own a business, you like to see things get done, right? That's why we're here. But once you understand how things work, I will tell you, your first year, 9 months, year, that's when you're understanding how things actually do work. And you go home and explain to your significant other, well, I thought the meeting was going to go this way. It went this way. And here's why. Something probably won't get done on this for a couple of months, but that's okay. I understand why now. So that frustration, yeah, I'm sure you'd have some of it, Cal, but it gets modified. It gets tempered over time.
Yeah. And I'm curious, this town meeting, I can look this up online, I guess, but we're here in New England and Massachusetts, you and I both, where town meeting is the historical way that anything smaller than a large city is governed with select people. I grew up in a town of like 12 or 13,000 people with a board of selectmen. Does the select board concept of governance exist around the country, or is it kind of unique to this old New England way
I
of doing
can't
things?
speak to across the country. I'll tell you
Yeah.
right now, I just don't know the answer to that. Certainly New England, yes. But I don't know how widespread it is. I live in a town of 6,500 people. We don't need a mayor. We don't need a huge, list of elected officials. We rely on our chief of police. We rely on the fire department and the head of the fire department. We rely on our town administrator. And beyond that, like I said, it's responding to the needs of the people. And town meeting is, I love it. I know that sounds a little crazy, but I love it. I don't care how long it is. I'd like to hear
Stay up till midnight, 1 a.m., couple days.
plenty of
Oh,
those.
yeah.
Absolutely. But impassioned people stand up. It's look, every vote means, some people are going to be happy and some aren't, right? But you don't leave town meeting and go grab someone by the collar and say, I can't believe you said that. Bam, bam. I mean, that's not the point. The point is the town listened to both sides represented, made their decision, voted yay or nay, and we now have a new go forward decision based on that. That to me is the optimal way of government being run. It's the fairest way by far. And everybody gets a voice. If you're in line at the mic, you get a voice. That may get painful, but there can be some humor in there. And you also learn things. You're like, I didn't know that. She's got a good point. I'm going to change my vote on that. So I think that's incredible.
I think it's incredible too. I guess at a certain size, you can't do it that way, but I
Yeah.
think it's incredible if you live in a town that's small enough that you can do that.
Yeah, I did too. I did too.
So Cam, great conversation. If people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I guess email, I'll start there. cbrown@kingfishandpartners.com. cbrown@kingfishandpartners. And I still have a telephone, 978-832-1410.
That's great. You give out your direct line.
Why not?
That's
Why
awesome.
not? Yeah, no, I like talking to people and I like discussing business opportunities. And, if after a couple calls, there's nothing there, there's nothing there. But, that's what I do. So I'm happy to do it.
Well, thank you so much, Cam, for your time today and for sharing everything that you have, everything from, your passion for managing and developing and coaching employees to, how town government works and everything in between.
Yeah. Didn't see that coming. So great.
So for those listening, if you learned something today or enjoyed the conversation, please share information about this podcast. Let's get this information into the hands of other business owners and share thought leadership with peers. So thanks again, Cam.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the Marketing Agency Power Hour. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. This has been another exciting episode of the Marketing Agency Power Hour. We will see you all next time. Another episode in the books. Thank you so much for tuning in. For show notes and more, please visit marketingagencypowerhour.com. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, providing marketing agencies with bookkeeping, accounting, and finance support. With SmartBooks, you gain the clarity and confidence to make your agency a success. Until next time.